Welcome to Trial by Wine. We take a closer look at crimes that highlight how fascinating humans can be. Schmidty, Swanee and Clarkey visit crimes and run them through their jury of three, debating both sides of the case to agree an appropriate, if totally fictitious, sentence. Please be advised, Trial by Wine may include explicit or disturbing content and will include drunken rambling. Listener discretion is advised. All right, how are we?
Great.
Oh,
Too much?
no, just enough. Oh.
I think I'm supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, even
Wow.
though the sound of it is something quite atrocious.
Yeah.
If you say it loud enough, you'll always sound precocious. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Diddle-diddle-diddle-I.
All right, Dick Van Dyke, settle down. All right, so I'm going to say how are we, but we are doing some back-to-backs, so I'm guessing we're probably much the same as we were 15 minutes ago when we signed off the
A little
last
bit more pissed.
just a little bit, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I had to do a little check-in with myself to make sure that I would still be able to read this, and I'm really good. I'm quite tidy, I think, so that's good.
Okay.
Probably
There are
by
no
the end,
signs.
but I
There are
won't-
no
Shot.
outward signs.
Not yet, no. But give me 3 paragraphs in and then it'll hit me like a ton of bricks. So, who are we? I'm Schmidty.
I'm Swanee.
And I'm Clarkey. And together we are...
Trial
Bye.
Wine.
Oh, fantastic. That was very exciting.
Did you just shake your shimmy as you said that?
I did shoulders,
Schmidty?
and it wasn't boobies. Oh, it was
Oh, you
shoulders.
did.
I was
Oh,
doing-
maybe.
I was doing
I don't
shoulders.
know what I did.
Well, I think it was
just-
because Schmidty had her hands
just
wide
excited.
and
Oh, yeah.
Carla was shaking her shoulders. I think they combined the two.
Yeah, I did. In the
keeping me
briefing,
warm.
I didn't say let's have a little dance, but it just turned out that way. Yeah. What are we drinking? Are you still on the rose or on something else?
We're having last episode's rose, and then we're going on. So I bought 2 on my farewell tour at Abortion. This one is called Bone Dry Rosé.
That sounds awful.
And I'm not sure. Yeah, I know, right? It's terrible marketing, I think. And it literally has on the artwork like a
yeah.
skull.
Yeah.
I mean,
Could be nice.
it's not.
It's got pretty roses on it. Some floral.
Yeah, I'm not sure they understand their target market,
Yeah.
but
All
also
right.
it's from Blue Pyrenees Estate, so I actually think it'll be quite delicious. But
Probably be nice, yeah.
we're just not quite up to that yet, so we'll have to tell you about it a little bit later, perhaps mid-episode, if you don't mind us having wine break.
I don't.
What are you drinking, Dal?
I don't know. How could I bore you any more with what I'm drinking than what I currently
Water?
do? So.
You on water?
Oh, there you
I
go.
Might, I might have
not
some
even water,
myself.
an old water that's been open for a number of weeks. So I feel like that's fairly apt for me. I always
Maybe
feel
we
like I
should-
bring nothing to this part of the segment. And it's
Maybe we
like,
should-
how is it
Sometimes you do.
dirty old water?
Maybe we should change your question to, instead of what are you drinking, to something that rhymes with that, like what are you thinking? Who are you sinking?
Why are you winking?
Linking? Why are you winking? Or who are you winking at?
me eye.
The
All right,
truth is,
so,
I actually forgot to get another drink. That is the
Old
truth.
water. Okay. Do you want to get
So,
another
yeah.
drink?
No, I can wait because I'm a bit cold, so it's not a problem. So
Okay.
if I'm desperate, I can drink the old, half-drunken Woolies spring water. So there you
Oh,
go.
honey, you're not desperate. You got a beautiful
am.
nail.
You got beautiful now. You got boyfriend?
Yeah.
I'm still on Absolute Vodka and Pepsi Max,
Oh,
just
there
in
you go.
case anyone cares.
We do, Dal, we
Of
do.
course you do,
All
darling.
right. Well, my story this time, and I'm going to, I know, shocks you, I'm going to continue the theme of cryptid crimes.
Oh, dun, dun, dun.
Yeah. This week, I know last week we did Bigfoot, or last time I
Yep.
did Bigfoot. This time I've been delving into the dark world of the wolf. Well,
Oh,
more
Is a wolf
specifically,
cryptid?
werewolves.
werewolves. That's right. I've been having a good old internet dig around werewolf crimes.
Werewolves of
And
London.
yes, you heard me right. True crimes committed by werewolves. Now, I'm sure you both
Hang
know.
on a
I've
minute.
tried looking before. I'll be honest. I've tried looking for werewolf crimes.
Oh,
Have you?
shit.
And I always end up somewhere like in Germany. It'll be interesting to see if you do.
Yep,
Like,
yeah,
there's-
I've definitely,
yeah, there's sort of
I've
like
definitely got a bit of
there's
but got a bit of America happening too, though.
Oh, really?
They travel
No, well,
around.
I was
Yeah.
sort of. I felt like I was going back to sort of this time where it was sort of, castles and
Oh well, we are definitely going back in the
Dracula.
tiny
Like,
whiny.
I don't know, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And I was like, I don't know if I
100%.
can find anything that was clear. So, I'm excited now. You've got my
Bring it,
interest piqued.
girlfriend.
You may have already read this one.
No, I don't think so.
I'm sure you both know all about the hairy horror heads that are the mystical man and beast combo. But just in case you're not that well acquainted
Hairy
with
horror
these
heads.
naughty pups.
Did you write that perhaps, or did that just took off your tongue?
I wrote that, yes. Here's some info from Wiki, which was a key contributor to today's story, as well as the National Geographic and History.com.
Ooh.
So the werewolf is a widespread concept in European folklore, Swanee.
Yeah.
Existing in many variants, which are related by a common development of a Christian interpretation of underlying European folklore developed during the medieval period.
Is that where medieval dates come from?
No, I think it's spelt differently.
It is spelled differently.
From the early modern period, werewolf beliefs also spread to the New World with colonialism. Colonialism. It's because I wanted to say
Colonisation.
I wanted to say colonisation. That's right. Belief in werewolves developed in parallel to the belief in witches in the course of the late Middle Ages and in the early modern period. Like the witchcraft trials as a whole, the trial of supposed werewolves emerged in what is now Switzerland. How about that? Trials of werewolves from Switzerland, especially the Valais and Vaud. And in the early 15th century, they were in later times.
Not about werewolves, it appears.
Not in the 15th century, no.
Drugs, no problem. Wars,
That's
no problem.
Right. Well,
werewolves.
Yeah. Oh, no, we've got a position on that. That's right. So, yes, werewolf trials all happened in Switzerland originally. Well, it wasn't even Switzerland at the time. But anyway,
Sorry, can I just
15th
ask,
century.
by werewolf trials, is this where you try out to be a werewolf?
No, not quite.
Like athletic trials or...
No, it's
legal
more where
trial.
people who are allegedly werewolves go on trial for their
Get
crimes.
sent to Switzerland, or they're Swiss already?
Well, they're sort of in that area, but I don't think it was called Switzerland at the time.
They don't seem like a bush forest. They love a forest. They love a
do.
forest.
Yeah.
They love a forest.
Okay.
Absolutely,
They're
they do.
like a forest in the sense of like a grim sort of fairy tale,
100%. They love running around in the forest. That's right.
Running past little caverns and
eating rabbits and stuff. Yes.
Just for snacks.
So, and then it spread throughout Europe in the 16th century, peaking in the 17th and subsidising for fuck's sake, subsiding by the 18th century.
I'm so glad you look good on the outside because I feel like on the inside you might be struggling a little.
Well, shush, I'll get there. The persecution of werewolves and the associated folklore is an integral part of the witch hunt phenomenon, albeit a marginal one. Accusations of lycanthropy being involved in only a small fraction of witchcraft trials. And, of course, we all know that lycanthropy is...
the love of werewolves.
Lycan, I've covered this in another episode, but lycan is, I think, a Greek word for wolf. So it's just basically being a wolf. During the early period, accusations of lycanthropy, transformation into a wolf, were mixed with accusations of wolf riding or wolf charming.
Wolf riding?
Yes.
Is that what you just said? Oh, my word.
The phenomenon persisted longest in Bavaria and Austria, with persecution of wolf charmers, not true stretchers.
Not true stretchers.
That's right.
You're a bloody wolf charmer. You
wolf
are.
Charmer.
That's
right. Wow. I draw a line at that.
They were
Stretch
recorded
the truth all you
until
want, but I will not have you
charming wolves. No,
not on my watch.
That's right. They were
recorded. It's so scary.
Already, The persecutions of wolf charmers were recorded until well after 1650, the final cases taking place in the early 18th century in Carinthia and Styria, or Styria, never heard of it.
Styria.
It's Mysteria to me.
Wisteria.
After the end of the witch trials, the werewolf became of interest in folklore stories and in the emerging Gothic horror genre. Werewolf fiction as a genre has pre-modern precedents in medieval romances and developed in the 18th century out of the semi-fictional chapbook tradition. The trappings of horror literature in the 20th century became part of the horror and fantasy genre of modern popular culture. And that would be back to your reference, boys, of Werewolf in Paris, was it? Was that what it's called? Or London?
No,
Werewolf
London.
in London. But then wasn't there a second one?
American Werewolf in London.
But wasn't there a second one where he's in Paris? I have a feeling that's
a sequel, probably. That was one of my
sequel.
favourite movies. We had that and I used to watch it. Can you believe that for someone like me? Oh, my God, Jesus. I loved it.
I am surprised. Also
and
thriller.
Was Emma Thompson in it?
She's the nurse, I think.
Really?
My parents,
Wasn't
we
too
used to have
scary
it
for
on.
you?
It was terrifying, but I don't know why my parents used to have it like on a video cassette. This is before my parents split up even, so it must have been under 10, I think. Would that be right? American Werewolf.
Shouldn't have let you been watching it.
1981, horror fantasy. It used to scare the hell out of me. And then when they're on the tube, oh my God.
Yeah. She's already scared. Okay, well, you would be surprised to hear that there are a plethora of werewolf crimes and trials. However, the majority of these were aligned to various witch trials and the basic persecution of pagans in the 16th and 1700s.
Hairy pagans or any pagan?
Just any pagan.
I feel like you couldn't be a non-hairy pagan and get charged with being a werewolf.
It was just
Although
no, you
it happens
could.
with
You
the
could.
moon, doesn't it?
Because the whole point is that you just look like a normal person when you're not transformed into a werewolf. Yes.
Okay.
And I think, back to that whole point, it was that at this period of time, you still had some people believing in the old gods that were still running around being pagans. And you had the rise of Christianity in whatever version of Christianity that people wanted to be, i.e. Catholic or Protestant. And they were basically trying to stomp it all out, all this pagan tomfoolery, by, picking on
we only
people
talk the
and
real shit.
torturing them and killing them, having called them a werewolf, which, frankly, I don't really believe exists. Anyway, but, like Bigfoot, by the end of this episode, I may well feel like I've got egg on my face for having made that statement. One of these people who found themselves on the wrong side of the law with regards to lycanthropy was Peter Stump. Old Stumpy was a farmer in Germany who was born in the 30s. That's 1530. So we've
back
gone
in the
way,
30s.
way back in the timey-wimey machine. That's right.
Wow.
A 1590 pamphlet was published in London, which was a translated version of a previous German one, but sadly none of the originals have survived. There are 2 copies of this pamphlet that you can find if you want to at the British Museum and Lambeth Library. The pamphlet describes Stumpy's life and death, and interestingly, there is additional information from the diaries of Hermann von Weisberg, a Cologne alderman, and by a number of illustrated broadsheets, which were printed in southern Germany and were probably based on the German version of the London pamphlet. So unlike a lot of folklore that comes from stories handed down, this was actually documented and published. Although we don't know exactly when old Stumpy was born or where, it was likely near Bedburg around 1530, and that's in Germany.
Is that because he's hundreds of years old?
Yes.
Because he's a werewolf, he might live
there's no suggestion in this that, he's got excessive longevity. In fact, this poor man does not get to live very long. But I think more to the point about why we don't quite know all the details about him is that there was some war, probably religious-based, where churches and records and everything got burned. So
right. And
you've got gas in terms of record keeping for these periods, yeah.
And does it say in any of these 2, what were they, 2?
Pamphlets.
Broadsheets
and pamphlets.
If Stumpy's limbs were fully developed?
If you would allow me to continue the story, I may have an answer for you on that.
Okay, I'll give you
I'm
another
really
10
looking
minutes.
forward to that, but I do need to just have a little footnote, which is I made a mistake. Emma Thompson is not in American Werewolf in London.
No, she's the nurse in the Tall Guy. And that's the first film that I
we
think
spoke
she was
about
in.
that before.
I
Yeah,
love
yeah.
that film.
Yeah, my mistake. There's another woman who's the nurse in American
I
Werewolf.
was very surprised when he said that. I thought, she's
Shmimmer
played a nurse
Schmumpson.
twice.
I think
Oh
he
my
said
God,
Shmimmer
that's wonderful.
Schmumpson.
That's one of my favourites. That's the one I get that quote, your decision to put a vacuum cleaner pipe up your bottom.
That's it. Does not preclude or
doesn't mean that I'm going to treat you or preclude you from my treatment or something. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, although, as I said, we don't know where he was born or when. It was likely near Bedburg around 1530, so Swanee in Germany, in that nice kind of Black Foresty area.
Oh, yes, Bavaria.
Now, Stumpy's name is also spelled as Peter Stub, Peter Stubb, Peter Stubby, Peter Storbe, Peter Stumpf, and other aliases include such names as Abel Griswold, Abel Griswold, and Ubel Griswold.
Is this true?
Yeah. Now, the name Stump or Stumpf may have been given to him as a reference to the fact that his left hand had been cut off, Clarky, leaving only a stump. So I'm not the only person to have called him Stump, right? And in German, Stumpf is for stump. So for the purpose of today, old Stumpy it is. Allegedly, someone had cut the left forepaw off a werewolf, and as old Stumpy was missing his left hand, there's no other explanation except that he must have been a werewolf.
Yeah,
Makes perfect
I think
sense.
that sounds fair. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I know. In the absence of any further evidence or information, I think that was a fair conclusion.
And the person accusing may have been a truth stretcher, but not a liar.
He was a farmer as well.
The person who said he cut the hand off a werewolf.
Was he a wolf charmer? No.
The farmer was the one who cut the hand off a werewolf.
Stumpy.
Although, to be honest, if you were in a close vicinity of an actual werewolf, close enough to be able to cut its paw off, I'm going to suggest that you weren't really in front of a werewolf, from what I know of them.
Yeah, because it would have smashed you.
Ask Swanee. She saw, an American werewolf in London. Okay, so Stumpy was most likely a Protestant. He was a wealthy farmer of his rural community. During the 1580s, he seems to have been a widower with 2 children, a girl called Sybil, who seems to have been a bit older than 15, and he had a son of unknown age. For 25 years, Stumpy had allegedly been an insatiable bloodsucker who gorged on the flesh of goats, lambs, and sheep, as well as men, women, and children.
Isn't that more vampire than werewolf? Or is it?
Oh, no, he ate them. He killed them and
he
ate
didn't suck
them.
their blood.
Oh,
Right.
Maybe he was an insatiable blood licker.
Lucky the records were kept so well in the 1530s so that we know that.
That's right, yes.
Goodness. I'm just trying to enjoy my afternoon.
I was just thinking about how a dog would, manage lots of blood and they lick it up.
Move along.
Maybe
lapper.
Maybe he was lapping at the blood, so he's an insatiable blood lapper. Okay. Being threatened with torture, he confessed to killing and eating 14 children, 2 pregnant women whose fetuses he ripped from their wombs and ate their hearts panting hot and raw, which he later described as dainty morsels. You got to remember the first thing I said there, being threatened with torture.
Yeah. I mean, you just whatever you.
He didn't have to go on to make a pantomime out of it and be
I think he did. Oh, fine.
I'll have a good panto.
If you want it, I'll make it. Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to get me on this? I ate 7,000 people.
I ate a couple of pregnant women with their little
panting and fetal hearts and yum, 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 and they were
do a bit
delicate
of blood
morsels.
licking.
Yeah. That's right. So one of the 14 children, okay, buckle up, one of the 14 children was his own son, whose brain he was reported to have devoured. Stumpy loved his son dearly, but in the end his bloodlust prevailed. Allegedly, he went out with his son into the woods, transformed into the likeness of a wolf, and ate his son.
So was his son found in the woods with his brain eaten out? Or
No one was found,
Love to answer that, but let's face it, no idea.
Right, so all I'm trying to understand is are the
It's the 1530s.
accusations
1580s.
baseless?
1580s.
Yeah. But so there's no.
Oh, we're into the 1580s now, that's right.
Yeah, he's a bit older
Yeah.
now. Yeah.
It's baseless.
Woof. In our time it is. I think it was pretty baseless then too. Yeah.
Woof.
In 1589,
She's one of
Stumpy
them
had-
too, Swanee.
Pumpy. Okay, I'll try that again.
Rugby
In
pumpy.
1589, Stumpy had one of the most lurid and famous werewolf trials in history.
Oh.
After
Really?
being stretched on a rack and before further torture
God.
commenced, he confessed to having practiced black magic since he was 12 years old. He is stretched on a rack. He claimed that the devil had given him a magic belt or girdle, which enabled him to metamorphose into the likeness of a greedy, devouring wolf, strong and mighty, with eyes great and large, which in the night sparkled like fire, a mouth great and wide, with most sharp and cruel teeth, a huge body and mighty paws. apart from the front left one, of course. Removing the belt, he said, made him transform back into his human form. After his capture, he told the local magistrate he had left the girdle in a certain valley, and I don't think that's a euphemism.
Oh,
The magistrate
no.
sent for it to be retrieved, but no
What?
such belt was ever found.
Could I just ask? He takes the belt off to turn back into. So what?
As a wolf,
while it's with the
one,
belt,
one pawed
he's
foot.
got a belt on.
One pawed, yeah, he's got to take his belt off. I know, it's a little
Excuse
on the
me, mate.
weird side.
Before I kill you, can you just take my belt off?
Yeah, I was like, why is that werewolf wearing a belt? Oh, how very smart. It just gives me
It's a
great proportion. It brings me at
It's
the
a
waist.
utility belt. Oh, yes, it's a
And I
slimming
did
belt.
read somewhere that part of the reason that he was arrested was that the townspeople had seen this wolf come in and attack someone, and they chased it down, and then it transformed into him. And that was why they said, oh, it's absolutely him. But I just read that in one place. So who knows if that's true or not.
Lots of people in that town
And
with
it's
their
probably not
pants
true
on
because I
fire.
don't really believe that he was wearing a magic girdle. I like it better as a girdle, Swanee. To your point about cinching his waist in, I prefer that.
And how would you have got a magic girdle off? Same way, like a belt? Would
Oh,
a girdle
it's not
strap
easy,
it-
is
I
it?
know.
I mean, we've all
One-handed, I'm
worn-
assuming.
That's what I'm thinking. It would
We've all
be
worn
quite a thing. It's not like you
girdles.
just went,
Well, I'm not sure we
I'll
all
take my
have.
belt off or my girdle off. Oh, I'm human again.
Well, the thing is, whilst I'm talking about werewolves, there are other cryptids in the world that also rely on, and it's a lot to do with Indigenous American folklore,
Yeah.
but a lot to do with the idea of having some kind of magical thing. So a belt or a skin of some sort,
Yeah.
not a human skin, like an animal
Yeah.
skin, that is imbued with some kind of magical power.
Yeah.
And trying to think of the name of this particular Wendigos in America. They are cryptids. Swanee's face was like, what? I had to think about it. But Wendigos in America, they're
I'm still
allegedly
thinking about it and I'm
also-
drawing a blank. What's a Wendigo, darling?
Wendigo's like a werewolf.
Oh, tell me,
It's
man.
a similar concept
Don't tell
as
me
a werewolf.
Wendigo,
Although
babe.
I don't think it's very similar, and they're shapeshifters, I think. So there's a little bit of a difference. So they might be able to shapeshift into something other than just werewolf. They're not exactly
Shapeshifters
the
are
same.
worse.
But
They're way
interestingly, Wendigos have existed in American Indigenous culture and folklore almost in parallel to this European idea of the werewolf.
Okay.
That doesn't mean it's true.
It's all
just
the gunge.
interesting. Well, it's all about, I think when we talk about various cultures that have existed in isolation of each other, having shared ideas of things, that goes back to Carl Jung's theory of shared consciousness, which is absolutely fascinating, and we don't have enough time to talk about that
Oh,
here.
my lordy,
So let me
isn't
get back
didn't
to
do
old
that day,
Stumpy.
Janelle. Fascinating.
So they never found the girdle/belt. So not only was Stumpy
No way.
accused of being a serial murderer and cannibal, but also of having an incestuous relationship with his daughter.
Ooh.
And not having a double-handed backhand.
That's right. He didn't have that. But his daughter was sentenced to die with him. Talk about victim blaming.
Why was she sentenced to die with him? Because she's part of the family.
Precisely. Because he was an abusive molesterer, so we'll just kill her too.
But she's got
it's
genes,
different cultural
so
context.
We've got to stop it. Stop the bloodline.
I don't know that it was that. I think it was just more that because I read somewhere else that it's quite possible that she had a child by him.
And that was the son that got the brain eaten.
No. Oh,
Different son?
I reckon now you're onto something.
That's why,
you might be onto something there,
Covering
but
up.
I'm not
Making
100%
sense now.
sure.
I see her and her brother like Hansel and Gretel.
Yeah, I just think they were victims.
He's like Fritzl, who had
Possibly.
children to his...
That lived in the wall.
Yeah, that was disgusting.
Also nothing like Fritzl because he didn't do any
Well,
of that.
he didn't actually build a purpose-built basement to keep his
He
child.
just wasn't ambidextrous.
For the purposes of
It's not a crime.
constant rape. So, yeah, I don't quite understand why the poor woman copped it, but she did. He was also apparently getting jiggy with a distant relative, which was also considered to be an incestuous relationship according
It's
to
the
the law.
1530s. How... what's a distant
very
relative
religious.
when you're in a town of...
Yeah, true. Well, she was 50
Oh,
feet
yeah.
away at the time that
Yeah.
they arrested her. She was distant.
She wasn't my sister, so she wasn't close relative.
We've got a cousin or second cousin or something, but according to the law, it was incest. And so that poor bird, I think, or there was a third woman.
There's no law here. This is lawless.
There's law. According to what I read, there is a third woman, and I'm not sure whether it's the distant relative or just another lover that he had, but there's a second woman who was also put to death for no apparent reason. Maybe it was because he confessed to having had intercourse with a succubus sent to him by the devil. Swanee, do you know what a succubus is?
Is a succubus, there's an incubus and a succubus. One is like...
That's right.
This come before when one's like your mother and one's like your father.
One wears a top and the other one doesn't?
No.
Succubi are generally, they can be women or female, but they suck energy and curse people by having sex with them. I can't remember what incubi do. I'd have to Google it.
They help your eggs become fertile, like incubating. They sit on your eggs while you go searching for food.
How do I spell succubus or succubi or succubus?
S-U-C-C.
S-U-C-C-U-B-U-S. Succubus.
U-B-U-S.
Suck your bus.
Sex mad devils. They're former demon, and they use sex to take your energy and ruin
So
you.
there's a demon or supernatural entity in folklore in female form that appears in dreams to seduce men, usually through sexual activity.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm thinking of something else. I do
That's
know
okay.
that
I'm thinking of something else. Well, if you think of it, you can come back to us on that.
Remember I said we're going to have a wine break? We're doing it.
He was having it off with a succubus sent to him by the devil. What's your dry as a bone?
The bone dry rosé, Dale. It sounds like it's quite appropriate for this story, actually.
Well, I was just talking about him boning a succubus, so sure.
Bones and
Smells all right.
So the devil had sent him that.
Yeah, because the whole point about his girdle was that was a deal with the devil, right? You don't just walk up and find a magic girdle that turns you into a werewolf just to let you know. You have to do a deal.
How do you find them? Oh.
You have to have a deal with the devil.
But what if someone else did the deal with the devil and then they lost it?
When you say girdle, you're talking Nancy Gantz or like a lace-up one?
I'm thinking a lace-up one because of the period. I don't think they had lycra.
They're not fancy pants, darling.
Yeah.
I do like a Nancy, but I don't think they had the lycra at the time. So I'm thinking more along the lines of lace-up, maybe a little bit corsety with a bit of whalebone in there.
How would he do it up with his hand missing?
That's precisely Swanny's point.
And also,
how do you undo it? Because you put it on, you turn into a werewolf. But how do you undo it when you're a werewolf without ruining it?
Boom.
You do them
with your one paw.
So who does it up for you anyway?
Please. Oh.
Well, maybe he did it up at the front. I mean, that's
more
not
backwards because he didn't have Booby Ella to put in the front.
I think it's fair to say that a werewolf doesn't have an opposable digit, so can't actually undo it even just with one hand.
It is magic, so maybe you could just scratch it off.
It's extraordinary that we're picking apart the veracity of this story. I can't believe it.
I know. You said this was true crimes.
Well, wait until you find out what happened to this guy.
Yeah, right.
Of course, all of his confessions were
on the
while
rack.
He was being brutally tortured and coerced, yes. Now, I'm not saying that Stumpy wasn't a crazed serial killer. He could well have been. But there is also a bit of an anti-witchcraft.
What are you saying then? Is there any evidence that he was?
No, there's no evidence that he was. There were children and people who were murdered at the time. There were definitely animals going missing, etc. It doesn't mean that he was responsible for it. So some people suggested he was a bit of a scapegoat, but he could have been just a serial killer for all we know.
You're not a werewolf. You're just a serial killer.
That's right. They were anti the pagans. They were anti-werewolves, not unreasonably, and not unlike the Salem witch trials. And so reason and sense played no part whatsoever in this trial. So it's unsurprising then that his execution was dramatic, to say the least. Mm.
Oh, no. Here comes the crime.
On the 31st of October, 1589, alongside his daughter, Sybil, and mistress Catherine, who was either his distant relative, a succubus, or some other poor bird, he was put to the wheel. And the way the wheel works is in 10 places it has red-hot pincers that are connected to your body, and as it turns, it tears the flesh from your body.
Oh, my God.
Oh, my Lord.
And then they do
that
it
sounds
with
like it's straight out of Trial by Wine World.
Yeah.
Well, there are times where I've
Bring
Googled
it
like
back.
the worst.
Sing it back.
Sing it back.
Bring
Sing
it
it back to me. Bring it. Yeah. I've talked about the worst medieval executions because they are horrific. Even this one tops some of them. Yeah. So they do that, and then they do his arms and legs. Then his limbs were broken with the blunt side of an axe head to prevent him from returning from the grave. And then before he was beheaded, and his body was burned on a pyre.
Jesus.
So he was alive when they broke his legs and ripped his flesh from his body on the wheel.
Oh.
Then they cut off his head, and then they burned him for good measure. I don't know why they bothered breaking his limbs to prevent him coming back from the grave when they burned him. Anyway, his poor daughter and mistress were flayed, as in all their skin was flayed from them and some of their flesh, and then they were strangled, and then they were burned alongside Stumpy, and the whole thing, as far as I'm concerned, is what one might call overkill. And as a warning against similar behaviour, the local authorities, this is awful, erected a pole. So the way this looks is you've got this pole like a maypole. The wheel is on top of it sort of flat, so you can see the pincers hanging down. They have an effigy of a wolf above it, and then they put his beheaded head on the top of it as a warning to other people. Just don't be a werewolf, or this will happen to you too.
It's a pretty good ad, really, if you think about it.
It's seriously something like something out
PSA.
of Game of Thrones.
People hang foxes on their fences.
Just say no, don't do
I hate that. I hate the fox.
What do they do?
Thing. They hang dead foxes. So you kill a fox, you hang it on your fence to keep other foxes away.
Oh.
In the country.
There's a place between Ilden and Yea, and the farmer there, it goes on for like 10 metres of dead foxes. It is so awful. And I'm thinking, if you got 10 metres of dead foxes, that is not keeping them away. That is not working.
Yeah, it's true.
Oh, anyway.
Depends where he's catching them.
I'm a townie.
He might be relocating them. I'm okay with it. You don't want foxes on property.
They're dead, and they're hanging off his fence.
Well, they're not all dead. Whatever
the
works.
ones I've seen on his fence are definitely dead.
Yeah, but the ones he's trying to keep away
aren't dead. Right? Okay. Right. Anyway, I'm a townie. I'm not okay with it. That is the story of Peter Stumpy.
Goodness me.
Now, you could just hold on to your thoughts about all this a bit like when we did Bigfoot, right? Werewolves are not only an idea from the Middle Ages in the back blocks of Europe, unfortunately. So I found this story on crimelibrary.org and Wiki, and be warned, it's nasty.
Oh.
Right, strap in.
Oh, God.
In 1995, Amanda and Rita Huffman were in 1995.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering about.
Yeah, Amanda and
85.
Correct. Amanda and Rita Huffman were found dead in their home. Amanda was the 15-year-old daughter of Rita, and she was found in her bedroom. She'd been stabbed, bludgeoned and raped, and then her killer eviscerated her. Rita was found in the family room. She'd been stabbed 31 times and mutilated. Her breasts had been removed and placed near Amanda. Her genitals had been excised and she had been posed in an exposed manner.
Which country did we discuss that?
America. This is America.
Right.
It was evident that both women had suffered terribly before they had died, so they'd both been tortured.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? Because I didn't understand it. What did the word eviscerate mean in that context?
Cut up, cut open. Because you asked.
Oh, no. I just didn't. No, you don't need to go into the
Swanee, why?
Sorry, no, not because I asked. No one's interested. No one wants to know. As you were, I just didn't. I thought I didn't understand something. I don't need to understand any more than that. Keep going. You look like you're about to cry or vomit. I can't tell.
Well,
I'll get you back.
Amanda's genitals were on her face and Rita's genitals were stuffed in her mouth. So he cut bits of these ladies off and then did these things, yeah.
Oh, dear.
Excuse me.
Okay.
Excuse me, miss. Can I leave?
That's the end of the bad bits. Well, I mean, it was all terrible, but yeah. There was no sign of forced entry as they had always left the back door open because obviously they just, didn't see the world as having people.
Where were they, Schmidty? You said in the US. Did you
Somewhere in the US, and I must admit, I can't remember. Might have been Ohio. I think it was Ohio. So the back door was left open. So from a police perspective, there was sort of no forced entry, difficult for them to determine what had happened. And actually it was Amanda's sister who'd been trying to get onto her mum and sister that alerted police that they weren't answering and was concerned about it. The same time, though, at about 2 a.m., a man called Jack Owen Spillman had been arrested not very far from the scene, and he was dressed all in black, and the police picked him up because they thought he might be out doing a bit of burglary.
Putting people's genitals on faces or something.
Oh, no, they didn't expect that. I mean, that's horrific. But they kind of thought, oh, he's just robbing people. But because they had no evidence, they released him. But as a result of him being kind of picked up as a suspect in the area at the time, looking a bit sketch, it did narrow the investigation. And so they looked into his background and discovered that he had prior arrests for burglary, rape, attempted rape, and he was suspected to be involved with the disappearance of a young girl.
He had prior arrests, convictions, or just arrests?
I'm going to say arrests.
Yeah, right.
Because that's all I read. I don't know that he did any time, and I think he's fairly young at the time that this happened. So, but while the police were watching him, because they suspected that he had something to do with it, they had no reason to pick him up at this point in time. So they just were watching him. They saw him throw out a blood-soaked ski mask, which later matched the blood of one of the victims. The blood stain was around the mouth of the mask, and it was later discovered that he had drunk Amanda's blood.
You said that was the end of it.
Or he'd lapped it.
Oh, stop it.
Anyway.
I'm going to do a basic.
It turns out he'd been stalking them for some time, and Amanda was his key target. He had a thing for her. The police arrested him, and they found more blood, hair and fibres which implicated him. And, of course, he had no alibi because he'd been running around killing people.
There.
To avoid the death penalty, Spillman confessed to the murders and also told them that he'd killed the missing girl. So he'd been living with a woman and her daughter had gone missing, and that's the one that they suspected that he had something to do with. But again, there was no evidence. At that point, they hadn't found her body and that sort of stuff. It was difficult to link him to it, but then kind of out of nowhere saying, yeah, I killed these women, but also I killed this other girl too. So now they've got a third one. So they were able to find her body, and it was buried and posed in the same position that Amanda had been left in. So what makes this monster a werewolf? Like, why is this part of the werewolf stories?
Yeah.
And the answer is nothing other than that he bragged in jail that he wanted to be the most famous serial murderer in the country and said that he was a werewolf that stalked his prey. So that's the werewolf connection.
Good question.
His main fantasy... Yeah, well, his main fantasy was to cut out the heart of a victim and eat it.
Oh.
He was big into torture, wanted to keep his victims in a cave, and complained that his first victim, who I'm assuming is the daughter of the woman he lived with, she died too fast as he was torturing her with a knife. He told police that after he buried her, he dug her up several times to rape her.
What?
Oh, stop.
Yeah, so he's a necrophile as well.
And a good digger.
Necrophile rapist. And he is now serving a life sentence for his crimes. And that was one of those
life
that,
sentence. That's not enough.
No parole. No, but okay, so hang on to him. But as in for sentencing at the end.
Hold on to me.
No, I don't have the other one like that.
Yeah.
That was the nasty one. The rest are, the other one, the next one's a bit sad, but it's not as bad, right? But the thing that got me about that was, again, back to your point earlier on your other story about how you see the same story over and over again.
Yeah.
This was so horrific, and there was some of this weirdness and almost nothing on it.
Yeah.
Just even
That's
the wiki's very short.
Literally do a whole episode on, isn't it?
Nothing in the trial. Yeah, there's nothing in the trial. Like, there's really very little that I could find on him. And I did do a little dig around. Yeah, it's weird. And yet others seem to capture the imagination of the media, and there's tons of stuff on it.
Yeah. Isn't it funny?
Sometimes I find there's less if they come forward and they say that they've done something. Do you know, sometimes it's when they have to tease out things. I found that sometimes it is so horrendous, and if someone says, "Oh yeah," they get caught, or they were, they admit to it. It's like, oh, there's not this other bit that is the build, and then you have people trying to find out answers and backstory and whatever else. So it's like, oh yeah, that happened. And
there's also the concept of low news day. Like if there's a lot going on, maybe it doesn't register. Whereas if there's nothing going on.
But that's horrendous. I can't believe
it's
that.
It's absolutely horrendous. And it's the brutality and the viciousness of the attack that I'm surprised there wasn't more. And I'm also surprised there weren't more victims beyond the girl that he confessed to. So, yeah, that's an odd one. And
Were there not?
There was no mention of the suggestion that there were other girls.
The reason I ask is, was it that he may have done that nobody knew about, or was it actually determined that he didn't do any others?
Probably more the former, in that there could be some that no one knows about that he hasn't copped to, but there wasn't like a series of similar cases or anything like that.
Maybe he was just bad at it because he'd been arrested for similar
attempted rape and
albeit
and
not
burglary.
as bad crimes. So you could see that sort of escalation going on. Maybe he just got caught all the way along.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm not defending rapists, but not all rapists do the awful things that he did too. Like, he's a sick individual.
But some of those things aren't rape. You know, there's obviously rape there, but there's a whole lot of other things going on too. But
but he was a bit like your Red Ripper. He got his jollies on the pain that he caused.
Yeah, but he got caught early, thank God.
Yeah. Okay, so now not only are people who think they're werewolves batshit crazy and dangerous, but it can be pretty dangerous if you are mistaken for a werewolf too.
Ooh.
I reckon, based on that first bit about being batshit crazy and dangerous, if you're mistaken for one, you're batshit crazy and dangerous.
Is it someone who's very hairy? Is it a hairy person?
And when you say mistaken for one, because I feel like it's more about being accused. I don't think people give a shit whether you're one or not. If they just go, you're a shit bloke and I want to accuse you of it, would they later go, oops, my bad? Or would they just go, oh, well, it was still him?
I don't know. Listen to this next story and tell me, because I don't think that the person who is allegedly a werewolf was a shit bloke or did anything wrong. And I have, just for the purpose of this next segment, I have editorialised a little because there wasn't much on this. So from rollingstone.com, I found the story of Pankaj Basin. Now, Pankaj was not a well man. In July 2018, he walked into an alley in Alexandria, Virginia, to look at some boxes that he was really quite convinced had human DNA in them. Now, it was behind a store, and the store manager, who knows, right? So he's just gone down and gone, there's human DNA in there, right? The store manager, Brad Jackson, who was also in the alley, and Pankaj followed him into the store as he thought he could get more info about the boxes. As they spoke, the discussion became a bit more heated. Now, I wasn't there, but I think it went a little like this. Pancake. Hey, what's in those boxes?
Is that new?
That's what I've decided to call him. Yeah.
All right, okay.
Brad, don't know. Pancake. No, really, I reckon they have human DNA in them. Brad, I doubt it. Pancake. No, really, don't you think they have human DNA in them? Brad, I suppose they would if someone had handled them, like, trace evidence of DNA. Pancake. No, I mean that a human head that I saw, that sort of DNA.
What?
Brad, look, buddy, I don't know what you're on about, but I think you should leave now. Pancake, are you threatening me? Brad, no, but please go. Pancake, are you turning into a werewolf? Brad, no. Pancake, yes, you are.
No.
Then Pancake stabbed Brad over 50 times with a box cutter, killing him.
What?
That was it.
God.
Then Pancake, no, nothing, Carla, relax.
Okay.
Then he stripped his own clothing off to the waist for no apparent reason and ran out into a car where the police found him, and not long after he was arrested. Upon his arrest, Pancake told the police, I killed the wolf. And then he said there was still time to save 99% of the moon and planets.
What?
Oh, my Lord.
Unsurprisingly, he was found not guilty of murder by reason of insanity and sent to a mental facility for 3 years.
Poor Brad.
Okay.
I know, it's terrible. So Pancake does his 3 years and was released in 2022. Now, I'm all for people getting on with their lives, but when he thought it was a good idea to set up a dating profile for himself that said he was an easygoing adventurer who believes in universal connection and who was recently getting back from 2 years of travel, people were not amused.
Oh, my God.
So much so that he was back in court in 2022 where the judge ordered him to be banned from social media. And that's the story of Pankaj, not Pancake.
That's another one that there should be way more to.
Why is he
What was in the boxes?
Nothing.
There was nothing in the boxes.
They're empty boxes out the back.
Yes.
It wasn't
Nah, I'm not okay with that. I'm not okay with someone getting 3 years for accusing someone of being a werewolf without any basis and then stabbing them 50
And were you mentally ill
times.
just for the 3 years and now you're fine, you can be released? That's horrendous.
Were you mentally ill for the 15 minutes?
Yeah.
He'd been sort of going around being a bit bonkers earlier. So he went into a store the day before, apparently, and started raving on about I can't remember.
Plenty of people are mentally ill and
I think he might have had but I feel like he had something like a canister of gasoline, and like he went into this place and the guy said, "Oh, just get out of here, you lunatic," and he was going to burn it all down, and it was, was trying to save the planets and whatever. So he was having episodes, is the point. I'm not saying that everything's all right.
3
That's not
years.
okay. I know, and the question comes down to, how do you determine that he's safe?
Remember when we did post-meditation where you kill someone and then you make up a story in arrears to make yourself make it all make sense?
Yes, I know what you mean, but I really don't think this was premeditated. But the point is, he should have been
post-meditated, wasn't it? That's the whole point. That's the difference between premeditation and post-meditation.
Because that's where you make up the story. No, I think in the case of this guy, he should probably stay in a mental facility. But we'll get to that in sentencing.
Who has evidence of the fact that he actually did go in and accuse the bloke of having a head in the box and there being DNA?
I made
in the
that
box?
bit up. He went on and on about human DNA.
No,
I made the human head bit up.
But who said that? Did he say that, or was there video footage of it?
Probably there was video footage of it. And I think there were also people
completely
around.
post-meditated.
No, I think there were people
witnesses.
around too.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
All right, so my last bit on werewolves, sort of.
Thank God.
Finally, not all werewolves are supernatural. I know. And not all werewolves come about, Carla, from having a magic girdle.
Magic belt.
Yeah, take young Thomas Stroop, for example. Like Augustus Gloop, who the name kept making me think of.
Augustus Gloop went up the pipe.
Yeah. Reported by HuffPost.com, BBCNews.com and MorningJournal.com, police were called in May 2011 when a bunch of people had fled a campground due to a young Thomas being violent towards people and animals. When the authorities arrived, they talked to Tom's friend, who told him his mate had been fighting with the other campers and had kicked a dog cage before passing out. It's not clear whether there was a dog in the cage, but given he was supposedly being violent towards animals, let's assume there was. So the police then woke up young Tom, who was sleeping amongst a pile of knives, swords and other edged weapons. You know, the kinds of things we all take camping with us.
Yes.
Standard,
What's her name?
right?
Catherine Knight. Is he an offspring from Catherine Knight?
Yeah.
Catherine Knight.
According to the report, Tom refused to open his eyes, which I enjoyed. So the police come along and like, come on,
He was
son,
just
up you
drunk.
get. And he's got his eyes shut. Yes, he was drunk.
Fucking hungover.
Refused to
Stop
open
it,
his
mate.
eyes.
Yeah.
And then he began growling at the deputies.
Oh.
Of course he did. There really wasn't any other way to respond to that situation, was there? Then, offensively, he went on to mimic Clarkey and myself from previous episodes, speaking in a thick Russian-like accent. And I enjoyed that it was reported as Russian-like, because that's exactly the sort of accent that we do.
Yes. Excellent.
Yeah. And he, like us, was also slurring his words and told the deputy, "I'm going to kill your cousin, Keith." The Morning Journal reports that the deputy does not have a cousin named Keith. Having said that, the article had used a comma after the word cousin. So maybe he thought the deputy was called Keith and wasn't actually naming the cousin at all.
Oh.
Yes.
And
I'm going to kill your cousin,
Keith.
Keith.
Or I'm going to kill your cousin Keith.
Yeah.
And we'll never know due to dubious punctuation in the article that I read.
And that's why it's important to get your punctuation right, kids.
Yeah, exactly. But apparently the deputy didn't have a cousin named Keith. We do know that.
But what was the deputy's name?
Well, that's the thing, right? So I'm going to assume it wasn't Keith either. I think there was no Keith involved
was just
in
lunacy.
the deputy's life. That's right.
Okay.
On the way to the county jail, young Tom did apologise. He admitted to downing way too much vodka, which probably gave him that accent, and blacking out. However,
that accent.
He did say that after a recent visit to Europe where he was scratched by a wolf,
Werewolf,
how that came about isn't clear. I mean, I've been to Europe loads of times and I've never seen a wolf. He now goes on rampages that follow the cycle of the moon.
Oh.
But you know what? There are wolves in Europe.
No.
That doesn't surprise me, though. I've noticed that full moons really seem to bring out the nutters in a lot of people. So, maybe it's true. So whilst we only have his own account that he's a werewolf, what is clear is that he was an underage drinker, and that is the charge that he got hit with.
Wow.
What a flog.
Not animal assault or
Cruelty. No. It was a dog cage. I don't even know there was a dog in it. So there you go. Werewolves, hey?
Oh,
What do you think?
I know, right?
I know, right?
Well,
I
what do I
know.
think?
again, it's one of the other things that I wish I could go back to being 10-year-old Swanee and watch Great Mysteries of the World, because there was definitely a werewolf one on that as well. And it was terrifying because they used all that sort of like really
Not nice.
mysterious and moody sort of imagery of forests and it being very,
Well, vampires
dark
aren't nice
European.
either. Yeah.
I don't think
Yeah,
they were out in the
scary.
summer. It's sort of a
Did
dark thing.
But I've got to say, Swanee, I remember visiting my Auntie Barb in France,
yes.
and I went over in winter.
Annie Barb von Werewolf?
It was I remember going for a walk, and when in the depth of winter in Europe, you only get like 6 hours,
So
7
dark,
hours
yeah.
light,
Yeah.
and it's that real
It's not even good
like
light.
it never gets light. Yeah, it's grey,
Yeah.
Yes.
oppressive,
Dreary.
and of
Yeah.
course everything's medieval or
Yeah, of
old
course. It's
styly. I was reading a book at the time, which was very foolish of me, which was like some modern retelling
didn't have
of the
enough
Dracula
light?
story. It was a retelling of the Dracula story.
Oh.
I was shit scared in not broad daylight,
In the middle
in
of the
bad
day,
European daylight,
Yeah.
walking around this, French village, just thinking, oh my God, this is where they are. It scared the bejesus out of me. So I can understand that atmosphere could create the hysteria.
It totally lends itself to
Yeah.
it. There's that. I know. I don't think of them being active during the summer months when it's all light and bright
No,
and
it's
light until
lovely.
midnight or whatever.
No,
else.
we're having
It's that
strawberries
real
and cream and camembert. and it's
frozen,
gorgeous.
foggy,
It's
moody.
the fog.
Yeah,
It's
I think
that really
I've
grey.
been
It's scary.
yeah.
It's the vibe.
I think of that. I've been to
It's
this
the Marbo.
region called Alsace, which is like on the French
Yes.
and German border.
Yes.
And I went there with Simone and Georgia many, many, many moons ago for a $7 airfare out of
Naked
London.
salad, Simone. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was like that. We went there sort of during Christmas, so it was very dark, very cold. It was just so cheap. We just wanted to go somewhere. So that's what we
Yeah.
I think it really was £7.
Like
for
when
the
we
flight.
went to Sweden.
Yes, correct. But it
Yeah.
was really
Spooky.
it was like spooky. There's very atmospheric.
Spooky. It is.
It is.
It's spooky.
And it's that foggy and everything feels damp and cold. And then, if it's not freezing cold, if it's always like that. And I don't
Did you not think that Hungary was a bit spooky too?
Yes, of course. The
And
same
we're
thing
right in
when
the
we
middle
went
of a major city. We went to
Yeah.
Budapest, and I wasn't spooked by it, but Swanee, I think in all of our
I like being
travels,
spooked by everything.
Budapest was the place that I saw you most uncomfortable, I thought.
Yeah.
Really?
Probably, yeah, because we went to this nightclub. And because I look Hungarian, because, 50% of me is, we were in this nightclub and I don't speak any Hungarian apart from swearing. And there is a certain feeling of anger, I got to say, that we felt while we were there. It's like people, it's not that they just resented everything. It wasn't they resented us personally, but there was just this feeling. And Hungary, has had a really tumultuous troubled background, which is, why Dad ended up in Australia. Anyway, we're in this nightclub and this bloke stole my chair because we got a couple of chairs around a table. Yeah.
I have no idea where this story's going. None.
Well, you don't remember it
I
clearly.
don't remember anything.
And there was a woman who, I don't know who her plastic surgeon was, but she should not go back to him, is all I'm saying.
Maybe a local.
She looked sort of freakish and she was sort of, I would have to say, plastic fantastic, but not in a good way. And then there was this muscle-bound Hungarian bloke and they nicked my chair. And I walked up and said, hey, that's my chair. And I swear I thought Swanee was going to faint with fright. She's like, we're going to die. You're going to get us killed. And I'm like, no, I'm not. There's one thing I can say about Hungarian men is that they're very masculine, right? So that he's not going to be threatened really by me. And I'm just going to go down the line of where are your manners?
He doesn't know you. Oh.
He doesn't know me. I said, where are your manners? That's my chair. Get off.
Yeah.
And he did. It was fine. But Swanee was terrified. She goes, you're going to get us killed.
We're going to die here today.
Because
I just sound like a dickhead. Sorry, Schmidty. I just
No,
sound like an idiot.
because it was there. There was this undercurrent the whole time we were there that it felt
vibe. It's Marbo.
It's Marbo, mate.
Shit could get real quick. Yeah. That's what it felt like. So I understood why you responded that way, and I was probably a bit flippant. Unlike that time in Sweden when you had a big punch up with the girls in that nightclub, but that's another story. Okay, sorry, Clarky, you were going to say.
I literally have no idea what I was going to say after all that.
What did I do? Was it on a stairwell or was it at a coat room?
I can't remember. Someone pissed you off
opera.
And you went for him, and I was
did
like,
you stop there,
I was dragging her out. Come on,
that's
get
not
out of
me.
here.
Gosh.
You were angry. You were very cross.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think they were treating her badly. There was a lot of, I felt, discrimination against Swanee when we were in Sweden because I'm tall and blonde, so everyone just ignored me. But I fitted in, and but they were not nasty, but I don't know. There was a little bit.
Nothing.
She wasn't having it.
You weren't Aryan enough or something?
She wasn't Aryan enough, and she got pissed about it. Anyway, sorry. So back to werewolves. But yeah, the whole point of all of that is that there is an
atmosphere. We're talking about werewolves. I got lost in this story of Hungary, and I don't even know where we were anymore.
I was talking about Hungary and various other places. And remember, a lot of the werewolf stories come out of regional parts of Eastern Europe, like Germany, Austria, Hungary, Romania. Swanee.
Oh, yeah. Can I sentence someone?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that, or maybe you have, I don't recall, which is highly probable because I have no memory at all. But I don't remember you saying before at a crime that someone has been eviscerated. So that has really captured my imagination, and I'm horrified by what Jack Spillman did to the mother and daughter. Is it Rita and Amanda Huffman?
Yeah.
No words. So my thing with him is if he's gone to prison and said, that he sort of fancies himself as a bit of a self-made werewolf, I would think that if we go back to the first story, the suggestion was that the reason I became a werewolf was because the devil made me one, right? He bestowed the magic belt on me and whatever else.
Dolly made me do it.
That's in the 1530s, 40s, 50s, up to 1580s, whatever it is. Now, the other crime was in the late 85, 95? Yep.
95,
right? So recent. So this guy's fully aware of lots of things. It's a very different.
It's not the 1500s,
time.
Is it?
It ain't. No. So if this guy wants to sort of imagine himself as being a bit of a devil, as it were, I would think that a punishment for him, befitting of him, would be for the devil to come to him and say, "Mate, you think you can do all this without any consequence and whatever else? I'm going to show you what fear is really like." And I would like to think that he would then have some kind of, when he's in jail or whatever else, and he's haunted by or totally consumed with the idea that the devil's out for him. Because I think that, he's portrayed himself in the real world as a monster, as the devil. But I would like to think there's something more scary to him that would totally terrify him. Here he is thinking he is above reproach. He can slaughter people and cut them up and do unspeakable things. Like someone, I couldn't think of anyone worse than the devil, but even the idea of it,
I think the devil's good like that because the devil will work it out for you.
Yes.
The devil will know what will be the thing that is the worst punishment for him. So you're right to sick the devil on him. Yeah.
And I know and of course it's very much it's a folkloric kind of
/ religious
punishment
response.
But I'm just trying to say what would be a fitting punishment for someone who already sees themselves as the devil incarnate, right? Well, the only thing that could be is something that would be more of that to him, I think.
Or maybe, so Schmidty, you would know this more than me, but are demons scared of angels? Like if you're down that path of being a demon, are you scared of purity and light and wholesomeness?
They're not frightened of angels. So some demons are fallen angels in the first instance, so they're the same things, but they have fallen away from the path of God, so they've decided that God's got it wrong, and so they've sort of, seceded, if you like.
Yeah.
And so they're not frightened, but there is definitely a power struggle. Yeah. So if you were to put the two in a room, there'd be a big biffo, and, we would always like to think that the good would prevail. So They're not frightened of them, but
so the punishment wouldn't
going
necessarily be to hang out with angels. Then maybe need to be with
not necessarily.
evil demons, or
I think that
it's not really a punishment.
I don't know.
Then.
I just what an animal. What an absolute animal.
From my perspective, I'm going to go a little bit old school, not 1530s old school.
Oh,
probably more just 60s, 70s frontal lobotomy. That'll do.
Oh,
knitting needles
to who? To
Jack Spillman. So he can't hurt anyone else. He's not quite vegetative, but certainly reduced in his capacity to just do.
I am absolutely staggered
things.
at this point in this podcast that you could really bring anything to the table that turns my stomach.
Would shock anyone.
And again, and here we go again.
Wait till tomorrow. Yeah.
What a
piece of work. And it was really weird because in my first round of looking for werewolf stuff, didn't come up. And then I found it. And I thought, who's this dude? And then I thought, that's disgusting. Truly disgusting. Yeah. And
so demeaning.
Not to make it worse, but it is demeaning. It's awful. And Rita was an incidental victim. So he had no interest in her whatsoever.
That was the mother, was it? He wanted the daughter.
It was just because she was home that he murdered her.
I mean, I don't know what's worse. Frankly, who would want to survive?
No, that was his first victim. So his first victim died too fast. I have a horrible feeling that Amanda and Rita didn't die.
I took that as being Amanda being the first victim died too fast, so it took longer.
There was this daughter of his, the woman that he'd lived with, who had disappeared, and they suspected him in that, and he had killed her as well. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
I hope they're both
all three of them are at peace.
Mother and daughter. Mm.
I read an article that someone wrote, which didn't have any more detail in it, but the point was more about what happens when people sort of succumb to this idea of bestial savagery, and just decide that they intertwine this fantasy of being a werewolf or a vampire or whatever, and it crosses boundaries that it really shouldn't cross. And that this was sort of an example of that, but it's awful. I mean, that's the whole point about the thing about werewolves and these. Not all cryptids, but werewolves. That's what's terrifying about them. And vampires is that they don't behave in a way that fits with.
Well, they're human sometimes, aren't they?
Yeah, and which is the more evil side? Oh, that was deep. That was deep.
You shocked yourself there.
I did. Yeah.
Whenever they talk about killers being monsters, I mean, always the response is actually they wouldn't be able to be killers if they looked like monsters. They have to look normal and non-threatening.
Unless you're a werewolf.
To get their victims. No, but that's the point, right? So I can understand why people would go, that person who is meek, mild, not a monster, actually has to transform into a monster to do the things they do. Whereas nowadays we just go, no, that's just within them all the time, but they present as someone who is meek, mild,
regular.
I think there is an element also that in nowadays society, we will put it all down to mental illness too. Almost not to excuse it, but there's a rationale for it. Whereas in 1530, even if he was mentally deranged, there was no.
I'm talking more about 1995 though, right? Where he, I think to do those things you have to have some kind of mental illness, but I don't think we should ever confuse that mental illness with the day-to-day mental illness that some people confront. And I think that just because you have a mental illness doesn't mean you will do the things that some people do. Also, just because you have blonde hair doesn't mean you'll do those things, or whatever it is. That there are plenty of people who get raped as children and go on and live normal lives, or get treated badly by their mother as children, live a normal life.
But they don't go and do murderers.
So I think there's something more to it, and you shouldn't ever brush it aside.
No, I agree. And I think the thing with these modern werewolves, being Thomas and Jack and Brad, is the complete lack of transmogrification is a problem for me.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah,
I was going to say that. I was just about to say that, funnily enough.
Yeah.
I'm like, that gets me every time as a transmogrification.
If there's no transmogrification, no one transmogrifies.
I mean, you could just be
what a load of old
common
shit,
murderer.
You are just a common murderer. You're just calling yourself
You're not
a werewolf. Doesn't make you a
mate.
werewolf. That's right.
You haven't got a magic belt.
I just had to throw that in there because I'm sure I've used it in another episode, and similarly you carried on about the word.
I do like to carry on, as you say.
I think that 1995 one, I think is absolutely horrendous. And
Yeah.
I think I just need to put that to the side because if I'm going to sentence it, I want to know more about it and I want to understand what on earth because it's that bad. So I'm going to put that to a side. It really belittles it
to talk about, doesn't it? Yeah.
Right? Like it's so bad. So I'm going to leave that aside.
So evil.
So the 1500s, I'm going to sentence Stumpy. And it's not a sentence. It's similar to what we've done with the nice place in Trial by Wine World.
Oh, he goes to the good place.
No, he doesn't go to the good place. I'm going to put him in the tiny whining machine and bring him to modern day world where people understand a bit more. Because we don't know if he did crimes or if he didn't do crimes. But
we understand if you have sex with your daughter, it's,
I want a bit more empathy for him.
That's the thing that happens.
Yeah.
If he did do the things that he was accused of, if he ate his son's brains, also, then we'll sentence you for that. But I'm just not sure that happened. So
I wonder whether or not. I do wonder whether the one thing that he did do was have a child with his daughter. I wonder if that was truly the underlying crime, was the incest, and then it was all a big beat up about him being a werewolf.
And you can't.
Yeah, well, I mean, Tas is a well-functioning society. I think it's, it's okay.
I think I just stopped to think, did I hear that correctly?
So
and then I realised and then we both looked at each other and then I thought, I heard that.
Yeah, went there. Like I've spent an awful lot of time in Tassie. I love it. But someone said to me once Devonport, Launceston and Hobart, and they said it's Moronport, Inceston and Slowbart. And this is from someone in Tassie who born and bred. So, like whilst I'm saying what I'm saying might sound horrific, there is a bit of a rep for Tassie of having isolation and therefore
inbreeding.
Like what was it? Not a direct, an indirect family member or a distant family.
Yeah, distant relative. I don't want to have sex with my cousins, but that's got to be somewhat more acceptable if there was no one else to choose from than your sister.
And if it's your second cousin, well, what do we say about that?
Even better.
Is it a hard line or a blurry line? So he's going to come to modern day world and get judged accordingly. But the 1530s or 1580s people are going to get sentenced to continually living in the 1580s because that just sounds like one shit show that I don't want to be a part of. Like you're scared of everything. You are brutal to people that maybe you used to love. I don't know. Just
like Swanee in Sweden in a nightclub.
Yeah, they're right. They're on their own.
Yes.
And then Pancake, that needs to play out more. I'm not okay with stabbing someone 50 times with a box cutter and getting 3 years. No. I don't think he was. It wasn't even 3 years.
It was 3 years in a mental
institution.
Yeah.
And we've discussed this before. If you kill someone under the guise of mental illness, do you not get 25 years in a mental institution? Because there's rehab and there's punishment. And that is a whole lot of rehab that is not okay.
Not killing in 3 years.
We discussed this with Wiggers where she was in jail. She came out and she went on to the social media stuff and was, doing all these inappropriate things.
Yeah.
I'm not okay with it.
I don't understand how they can enforce a ban on social media, to be honest, though, with Pancake.
Well, Donald Trump didn't he? Didn't he get banned?
Well, but wasn't it the platform that had to ban him in the end? It wasn't just other people saying you need to be banned. So a court order is interesting because, anyway, I don't really understand how that works, but let's assume it did. All right, so what about Tom Staub? The little drunk kid. We don't care about him.
Can we stop recording for a sec? Because I can't remember who he was.
One with the knives and said that he was a werewolf.
He's the drunk kid at the end.
He's just a moron.
It was the last story. He growled at the police and
he
then
started barking or howling or whatever.
He said something about, I'm going to kill your cousin Keith.
Still don't get it.
There wasn't even a story there though.
No, not really. I mean, he just got pissed at a campground and upset some people.
Oh, that's right.
Because you threw me with all of that conversation about Hungary afterwards. And then I was going to say something and I couldn't remember, and so I just forgot the whole story. That was just a nothing. Yeah,
I put that in to lighten the mood.
I put it in to lighten the mood
because we had that really nasty one.
He just needs to be shamed because that's not werewolf action, mate. You're just an idiot.
No,
you're just a drunk like Schmidty and I. And
again,
no transmogrification. Oh,
I've got a sentence for him. He needs to go to Russian accent school. So that he has a Russian accent, not a Russian-like accent.
Also, I think he just needs to aspire more.
He does. See? He has to aspire to have accents like us.
And bark like a dog.
Wow, right. Good one, Schmidty.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I know that was silly, but that was the intention. As we say every week, miss you already.
Ta-ta.
Ta-ta, my lovelies.
Ciao, ciao, ciao.
Ciao.
Thanks for listening to Trial by Wine. You can contact us at trialbywine@gmail.com. Please rate, review and subscribe to Trial by Wine on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to support us, you can become a patron at www.patreon.com, Trial by Wine, or visit our website www.trialbywine.com to donate to us. Your support will help us cover many more cases and apply wacky sentences. We really appreciate you listening and hope you tell everyone about us. Our cover art is by John Christo and music is by Beauchamp from pixabay.com.